Welcome back to Farrand Friends Friday. I'm Karen Waltuck, the horticulturist from the Beatrix Farrand Garden Association in Hyde Park, New York. In our regular programming season, we have a series of workshops called Hands in the Dirt Workshop. And we also were going to have a cultural programming series called Third Thursdays. And unfortunately, due to the coronavirus this year, we had to cancel both of those programs. But we did want to invite one of the artists to participate in a video with us. Local Stanfordville willow weaver and farmer Jesica Clark is here to teach us how to make peony crowns. If you visited our garden before, you know that we have quite a large peony collection, and this seemed like a great activity to teach some of our visitors. So hopefully in a future season we can have her back for a hands-on workshop with all of you. Let's go watch Jesica make a peony crown.
Hi guys, I'm Jesica Clark. I'm the owner and grower at Willowvale Farm in Stanfordville, New York, and I grow vegetables and willow, and I've been a vegetable grower for I think 17 years now and a willow grower for about 5, and I also weave with willow, and today we're going to make a peony crown. It's basically this woven garden object that's used to hold up your peony flowers as they get bigger and get heavier, and it keeps them from flopping down on the ground. And it's really great. It's all natural materials. It's made with all willow, and it's meant to do its thing and then eventually be kind of composted back down into the ground, and then you can make another one. So that's what we're going to do. Here we go. I'm starting with these larger pieces of willow, and everything I'm going to be working with is actually 1-year growth. The way that willow works is it's a perennial plant. It grows for, decades and decades, but every year in the wintertime it gets cut down. And those 1-year sticks, the sticks that start growing in the spring and pretty much finish by about September or so, that's what you use to weave with. And by the time you cut it, all the leaves have dropped and it's dormant, so it's safe to cut. And, all of the energy that the plant produced that year is mostly in the roots. And you take the sticks, I've actually dried these out from their winter harvest, and then I've re-soaked them again to make them pliable. And what I'm working with here specifically is a Salix purpurea. This particular cultivar is called bleu, spelled in the French way. And it's kind of a nice, thicker, pliable willow. So that's what we're starting with. And I've got 5, but we're going to work with 4 pieces first. And we're going to take a pair and reverse them. The way willow grows, like any plant, it's got the part of the plant that comes from the bottom and goes to the top. And the bottom part of the plant is what's called the butt, and the top part is what's called the tip. And I've just kind of taken my pair and switched them so that there's a tip and a butt on each end. The cicadas are really out. So we're going to take them so there's a tip and a butt at each end, and twist them around so they form a nice little cohesive pair here. And I'm going to put them in this jig. I use a jig because I make a lot of these, but you can also make this just straight into the ground and then put it over your plant when you're done. The way this jig is made, it's got all the holes that I need, which is 24, and I've put this pair in an arch in opposite holes like that. And then we're going to take another pair. Which ones? Probably these 2. And we're going to do the same thing and insert them in holes that are kind of at right angles to the first set. And when you do this sort of thing, you sort of realize kind of the particular strengths of working with willow as a material. Once you've done that harvest, drying, re-soaking thing, it actually becomes in a way more pliable than it was when it was fresh, when it was growing, which is actually a pretty strange thing around plants. Most other plants, if you dry them down and try and soak them, they either just stay dry or they actually become more brittle. And this is actually the opposite. It becomes more pliable and strong. So you can do things like make these arches without it kinking, which is really nice. So we've got these as a cross, and we're going to take our next set of 8 sticks, which is a little bit shorter. I believe we're going to keep working in pairs. we're going to keep doing this butt to tip thing and twisty thing. And we're kind of just making this framework. We're kind of just interweaving all of these pieces so that, you know, the peony stems will have something to rest on as they go. So there's a lot of different ways to make peony crowns. It kind of just depends on how you want your sticks to be, you know, what kind of structure you would like out of it. So this is my way of doing it, but there's certainly a bunch of other ways that you could do this. And I kind of, as I'm bending it, I tend to kind of do like a little shimmy, and I support the willow where it's arching just so that it doesn't kink, and also to kind of influence that shape a little bit. There we go. So what is it now? I think it's July, late July. Sort of a funny time to be making peony crowns, but at least maybe then they'll be ready to install. You know, usually when people put these in, they would put them in, oh gosh, I don't know. When do peonies come out? Is it May? Sometime around May. So you want to put them in when they are just, you know, coming out of the ground. You want to set them in early so they can grow up, you know, into the structure as opposed to trying to sort of wrangle it after it's already gotten tall. So at least this will be ready. So I've gone ahead and I've done 4 more pairs into this sort of configuration where they're crossing over the original 2 arches that we've done. This is where it's going to start to get a little interesting. We're going to add another set of 8 in pairs. And now these are going to cross kind of where the other ones, the ones I just put in, where those arches are coming down. It's going to go across them like this. And they're actually going to go into the same holes as these first 2. Whoopsie. So, like this, and then the first couple I can get in without using tape, and then the last couple of arches I'll have to do that. Zoop. Now these last couple of arches, go kitty corner to the first ones. So I kind of just hold them all together. I'm not going to twist it yet because I have to do this part first. And just make it basically as tight as possible. Like that. And then a little twisty. Okay. And last set over here. This particular design is based off of a similar design, peony crown design, by the folks who I sometimes get willow from. It's a couple of women who grow willow up in Canada. But I actually kind of just looked at their piece, went, oh, looks good, and they gave me permission to start making my own. So no one actually taught me this particular design. It's sort of just based off of stuff that I've seen. And that sort of comes with the fact that I've been weaving willow for a little while. Once you start weaving with it, you can recognize sort of the patterns and the engineering behind things, or how things are put together. But when I started, you know, I didn't know anything, and it's a little tricky to you know, learn to weave willow. Especially when I started. It wasn't pre-internet, but it seemed like it, because there was like very little weaving, you know, internet presence in that time. It's starting to be a little bit more prevalent now, and I think a lot of folks like me and younger than I have started teaching, which is really great. So it's easier to pick up now. But when I started, you know, and I still to this day, I still travel to, you know, to England, to Canada. I'd love to go to France, or people from France come over here. People I know from Germany and from Poland. There's kind of this like really great worldwide community of weavers, of willow weavers. And it's just been really good to learn from them and to, you know, figure out different patterns and things like that. But anyways, we've gone to our last 4 kind of structural pieces here, and these are the shortest ones. And they're a little bit thicker even than all the ones I have been using, even though they are first-year willow. Like any plant, there's a lot of variation in the way the sticks grow. So these happen to be a little bit thicker and probably a little bit branchy, I have to say. And they're going to actually lock all of these in a little bit by doing some actual weaving in and out of the other arches. So you can see what we're going to do here is we're going to do a little bit of weaving with our shortest sticks. And they're actually going to do this thing where we can see with the first arches that we've put in that this set goes in front of it and behind these arches here. And we're going to actually do the opposite of that. We're going to go behind this first arch and in front of the others, and that kind of holds everybody in place. And then these go down into here and here, like that. And we're going to go around and just do that for everybody. So these willows do happen to be cultivated willows. You can weave with wild willow, but you have to sort of find particular ones. Not all willows are great for weaving. You sort of have to find ones that do have that really good combination of sort of flexibility and lack of brittleness. I would say that weeping willows definitely do not work. Some willows in the Salix eriocephala and different hybrids, and sometimes you'll find naturalized Salix purpurea. Those will almost always work really well if you are keen on wild harvesting. Okay, so great. So we're almost ready to weave. There's one last step, which is if I pull up the finished one, you'll see that the shorter sticks get incorporated into the weaving, and their purpose is also as an anchor. So when you put it into the ground, it's going to go flying away because this is actually really lightweight after it dries. But for all of these 8 sticks that I'm about to put in, you can actually push them through the weaving so that they can go into the ground and anchor your peony crown in. So that's it. You kind of just place them into their little holes. Like that, and now we're ready to start the actual weaving. I should mention that I am left-handed, so everything I'm doing is from a left-hander's perspective. So I'm weaving left-handed. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start the actual weaving, and it's just so that we can hold all of these sticks in place so that when we take them out of the jig, it's not a big floppy mess. And what I'm going to start with is actually a traditional weave in an untraditional way, which is I'm going to start with what's called an Irish mouth whale. And it's a way to weave things that are, you're kind of holding in, you're doing exactly what you do here. You hold in a bunch of things so that you're almost weaving from the top down. Most weaving, when you're making a basket, is woven from the base up. And so you make a base, you stick sticks, and at the top you put in a border. And in a lot of traditional Irish weaving, they actually weave things, quote unquote, upside down, but they weave from the top down. So a lot of things like Irish creels and coracles or currachs, those are woven with the mouth part or the opening first, and then they weave their way towards the base. And so I'm using that style of weaving so that we can actually just weave these things in without having any other pieces holding it in place like you would on a different sort of basket. And the way that this Irish mouth whale works is we're starting with, so we've got 24 holes here, and we're starting with 24 pieces of willow. This was Salix purpurea bleu. This is Salix purpurea Dickey Meadows. It's an English willow. That I've cultivated, that I've grown myself. And these are this is also 1-year growth, but they're untrimmed and they're about 5 feet long, because I'm 5 feet long. and they're started with the butts, which is also a little funky, but it's the way it goes. And so this starts with a butt in front of one of these areas here, and we're essentially weaving in the round, so it doesn't really matter where you start. I just like to start here. And it starts with the butt out in front, and then behind, and then in front, and then it gets woven behind, like that. And then the next piece, we're going over a little ways, and we're gonna kind of do this locking, twisting weave where it goes underneath, and then it starts its journey so that that butt is again in front of a stick here, and then behind those, in front of those. So it goes from being in front, behind, and out, and it also goes from being on top, below, on top, below. And it's actually that whole twisting motion that locks everybody in, and that's why this weave is really useful. And that's sort of the beauty of taking this really traditional, very old, basketry and weaving is one of the oldest forms of work and craft that humans have. I believe there's a basket out there that is about 7,000 years old that was trapped in mud and is still intact. So you can see that, and it's very intricate weaving. You can see that humans have been weaving, basically putting sticks around sticks for a really long time. And for the majority of that time, all of these very local traditions, were kept, which I think is fantastic. But it's also really exciting in our, modern age that we get to take these older traditions and, use them in ways that make, pieces more interesting, and kind of, new and fresh, but while still basically just putting sticks around sticks. So I'm continuing basically the same pattern all the way around. And there's going to be, when you first start some of these guys, it's a little tricky to kind of get them to where they need to go. So this part's going to go a little slower. But it is that same move. And you end up with this really lovely, flowy design at the bottom here that holds itself up. It won't slip anywhere. So yeah, we keep going around. We keep going in front, behind, and over, under, till our 24 sticks are almost done. The last few, because they, at the end of the day, you kind of want to not see where you started and stopped. You want it to look even all the way around. We're going to have to weave our last few pieces kind of in both directions so that they complete the pattern in the same way that the other ones have. And I'm almost there. All right, nice. So you can see if I turn this around that you can't really tell where I've started and stopped, and the pattern is pretty much the same all the way around. And if I were to lift this up now, this weaving that I've done will actually just stay. I could clip these pieces and we could call it a day. But we're going to continue on, to add a little bit more strength, and also sort of as a matter of aesthetics, we're going to take the rest of this willow and we're going to weave upwards and onwards to make a little band that sits at the bottom here. So it's this is the Irish mouthwell here, and then here's the band that we're going to weave after the fact with the rest of the willow. And we're going to go from an Irish mouthwell to what's called a French rand. And randing essentially is one of the easiest weaves. In essence, it is in front and front behind, but there's no twisting involved. It just sort of builds up the side. And it's done, again, in the round so that you can't tell where you started and stopped. And we're going to do all of the pieces in turn around and around, switching from stick to stick until we've almost run out of space on our willow here. So with the French Rand, because again it started in the round, you can start anywhere with this weave. So I'm going to start with what's in front of me. And you can see that there's willow basically coming out of every space here, you know, kind of coming out in the spaces between all of the arches and things that we've put in before. And we're going to weave every single one. And basically what we do is we just continue to weave going up. So it's going to come from the bottom, and it's already in front of this stick here, so it's going to go behind this set of sticks, in front of the next one, and out. And because I'm left-handed, I'm weaving to the left, and this one I took, you know, is going to the left. But the way that this French randing works, the next stick I'm going to take is actually the one to the right. So I'm going to move to the right and take this guy here, and it's going to do the same thing. It's in front of this one, so it's going to go behind this one, in front of this one. And you can see it comes out in the space just behind. So as we do this, we're always going to be sort of just moving our sticks over a couple of spaces, and we're building up at the same time. And actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to do what's called a speed weave. So once this has happened once, I'm actually going to go ahead and do it again. And that way, as I'm moving around, I'm building up more than one layer at a time. Like that. And this type of weaving is meant to be fairly fast. It's not too structural, but it is a way to use the willow so that it sort of builds up sides quickly. Okay. So as I'm catching up here, there's sort of this big bunch of sticks, but not a problem. I'm going to take them all and kind of do them in turn. So these very bottom ones that haven't been woven yet at all still go 3 ins and outs over, 3 stitches over, and then they'll get progressively less as I've built them up from the first parts that I've been weaving. And we know we've caught up when we once again have the ends of the willow coming out in every single space, you know, these little gaps between here. So there's going to be one coming out of every single gap, and it means we're even. So you can see that we've actually built up some layers here from the bottom, and it's starting to look like a nice little band. And I'm going to take a break here to go ahead and use this wrapping iron. So this is what this wrapping iron or wrapping stick, wrapping tool looks like. It's this nice little just whomper shape, and it's got that metal insert for that weight. And you actually need, you know, it's not a light tool, it's a pretty hefty tool, and you need that weight to be able to really bring that willow down in the weaving. So you really want to do it with a good solid whomp. Don't be shy about it. Between every gap, or in every gap I suppose, between every set of sticks there, all the way around. And if you're doing it right, you'll see the weaving itself go down just a little bit and stay there. All right, I think this is my last side. Oh, actually I probably did these already, it looks like. All right, good. Now we continue on, and we're gonna do the same thing. And I generally like to start my levels of randing in different places, so I'm just gonna turn myself around and start again. And I'm leaving a little bit. We're gonna, you know, as I do this last 3 layers or 3 sets of randing, I'm leaving a little bit of length at the end to do a little locking weave so that the weave itself doesn't undo itself once it's dry. So I'm not going to weave all the way to the tippity tips just yet. I'm going to leave myself a little bit of space. Okay. So once again, we've ended up with those pieces of willow coming out of every space, out of every gap. And I'm going to do one more set of wrapping down. And now that locking weave, it's really simple. It's really just like randing, but instead of, weaving to the left and taking from the right, I'm going to weave to the left and then move to the left as well. And it kind of does a similar sort of twisty thing that Irish mouth whale at the beginning did. It's a nice little bird. And I'm always taking this one that's underneath, like that, and that sort of holds everybody in with a little twist. So these last few pieces, kind of like what we did with the Irish mouth whale, we're gonna do a little loop-de-loop and slide them in underneath. And then, again, you won't be able to tell where I've started and stopped, and that pattern will be complete. So there we go. That is all like that. And then the very final piece, which adds, again, a little bit more strength and is very decorative, is I'm gonna stand up and put some ties at the very top. And it's what's called a God's eye, is the type of little weaving tie that you do. And it's actually something that I think that they teach in like children's camp. So it's a really fun, easy, decorative way to hold these guys together. So the last thing we're going to do is we're going to put these little ties on here. And again, these are called God's eyes. And it's just a fun little weave. It kind of ties, binds these guys together so they don't move too easily. And it's easy to do. And it's very nice looking. It's a little hard to explain, but easy to see. So I'm just gonna do it. It crosses over, goes behind, wraps around. It kind of does this pattern where it visits every single side of the join and does a little like behind crossy thing. And we're gonna keep going around until we run out of willow, basically. And always to the like sort of outside part of it. I'm pretty sure there's video tutorials of how to do this particular piece. I think we're gonna stop probably there and lock it off. Yeah, well, one more, why not? We'll go like that. And you just lock it off by putting it again underneath like that, and then sliding it through right there, and pulling it through, and that one is done. And we're gonna do this 4 more times around these guys. These ones down here are kind of locked in by the way that we put in this last hoop there, so I don't worry about those too much. So we'll start with the one that's right in front of me. Why not? Zoop. And I would say, if you are making your own peony crowns, it's pretty important to learn this particular one. These peony crowns, even finished, you can finish them with some sort of finishing oil like a linseed oil, whatever, wood UV waterproofing protectant that you would normally use. But even with that, these guys really only last somewhere around, 3 or 4 years, maybe 5. And usually one of the first things that goes is actually these little God's eye ties, just because they're made with the smallest pieces of willow, and they're also the ones that get the most sort of like UV and rain on them. So, you can have a proper, well done. I just gotta get, this little guy's evading me. This is what's called a bodkin. We use it to make space and pierce things. I'm gonna use it to make space here so I can get this little piece here. Anyways, it's useful that you can have, a perfectly functioning peony crown, and you just redo these God's eyes every few years. And then you can keep it a little bit longer, another season or so. Okay, next one here. All right, look at that. So we can take this bodkin out, and we can do one last little trim of these guys so that they're not poking out. And I would call this a finished peony crown. Okay. So, I think all that's left to do is to pull it out of the jig. And you have to be a little ginger with it so that it doesn't pull apart. But I think we'll be all right. Look at that. Easy peasy. So there we go. Ta-da! So yeah, really great. Next year in May, you can plop this in the ground, push those anchor sticks in, the peony will go through and it'll be nice and supported. Ta-da!
Thanks so much for watching that workshop with Jesica Clark. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, and I can't wait to have her back in a future season. Be sure to subscribe to the channel and tune in for another Farrand Friends Friday next week.